Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving deep today into the world of Todd Chrisley.
Well,
The reality TV star who went from showing off all his wealth on Chrisley Knows Best to facing some pretty serious accusations of sexual harassment and financial fraud. It's going to be a wild one.
definitely a story with lots of twists and turns. We're going to be looking at this 2014 Radar Online article. It's about a lawsuit from one of Chrisley's former male employees alleging some shocking stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we'll also be digging into the court documents from that same case. Plus, we've got a couple articles from the Nashville Celebrity Gossip Report. They talk about Chrisley's alleged affair with his business partner, Mark Braddock, and how it all went bad.
Okay, so it sounds like a real-life soap opera. We're going to try to sort out the truth from the fiction, or at least get a clearer picture of what's going on.
Right, get to the bottom of it.
All right, are you ready to jump in?
Let's go.
Okay, so rewind back to the early 2000s. This is when Chrisley and his business partner, Mark Braddock, allegedly had an affair. The interesting thing is, Braddock claims this was his first experience with a man, and he even told his wife about it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting detail. According to those Nashville Celebrity Gossip Reports, Braddock and his wife, Leslie, they've been married since 1987 and have two sons together. So you have to wonder what kind of impact this must have had on their family.
For sure. But this alleged affair is only the beginning. Fast forward a few years to 2009, Chrisley gets hit with his first sexual harassment lawsuit. It was filed by a group of his female employees. This first lawsuit was ultimately dismissed.
Right.
But it seems like it really opened the can of worms. 3 employees, Chrissy Kicklighter, John Hudlow, and Jillian Hayes, they were all questioned during the legal proceedings, and they gave some specific examples supporting some of the allegations from those women in that initial lawsuit.
And that's where the 2010 lawsuit comes in. Picklighter, Hudlow, and Hayes filed their own lawsuit claiming they were fired because they spoke up about Chrisley's behavior. They said they were let go just before Christmas during a recession. Which,
Wow.
yeah, if that's true, it just adds a whole other level of messed up to this story.
Makes sense, though, right? People are usually afraid to make waves, especially when their jobs are on the line.
Yeah, especially in a recession.
Exactly. But it sounds like these 3 employees felt strongly enough about what was happening that they were willing to take that risk.
It seems that way. So this 2010 lawsuit goes into a lot of detail about the kind of environment Chrisley allegedly created at his company, Chrisley Asset Management. Cam, right? It really paints a pretty disturbing picture.
So let's get into some of those specifics. What exactly did the lawsuit allege?
Well, for starters, they claim that Chrisley would regularly make inappropriate comments about his body and would invite male employees to engage in sexual acts with him. There were also allegations of inappropriate touching sexual gestures, and he used a lot of really demeaning language towards his female employees.
It's tough to imagine feeling safe and respected in a work environment like that, but then it gets even more disturbing. One of the most shocking accusations came from John Hudlow, who claimed that Chrisley asked him in front of other employees to join him and another male coworker in the restroom to jerk off.
Wow. And Jillian Hayes alleged that Chrisley propositioned her. He asked if she would sleep with him if she wasn't married.
Seriously.
Yeah, these are very serious accusations, and they paint a picture of a workplace where employees felt pressured and intimidated and unable to speak up without fear of losing their jobs.
Makes you wonder how this kind of behavior went on for so long. Was Chrisley so powerful that no one dared to challenge him?
It's a good question, and it's important to note that both the 2009 and 2010 lawsuits were settled out of court. So we don't have any definitive legal rulings on these accusations.
Right. But even though these particular lawsuits didn't go to trial, years later, more allegations come out this time from Mark Braddock. Remember him? Chrisley's former business partner. He testified against Chrisley during his trial for bank fraud and tax evasion in 2022.
Right. Braddock had turned Chrisley in to the FBI and was granted immunity for his testimony. And in his testimony, he claimed that he and Chrisley had been involved in this intimate relationship for about a year back in the early 2000s,
Who supports those earlier rumors.
which exactly confirms those rumors we talked about.
And it's not just that Braddock confirmed the affair, but he also claimed that he helped Chrisley commit financial fraud, forging documents for bank loans, even paying off a blackmailer who threatened to expose their relationship.
Yeah, they paid a whopping $38,000 to keep that under wraps.
Wow.
Braddock even admitted that part of the reason he helped Chrisley with all these illegal activities was because he still had feelings for him even after their relationship ended.
It's crazy how complicated these relationships can get, especially when you throw power, money, and secrets into the mix. But then in 2012, Chrisley and Braddock have this huge falling out.
Right.
Braddock feeling betrayed and angry decides to get revenge.
And that's when he starts sending damaging information about Chrisley to the media and government agencies?
Like a scene straight out of a movie.
Totally.
Yeah.
Chrisley's past was catching up to him. It's worth mentioning that back in 2017, when rumors about his sexuality were going around, Chrisley did an interview with People magazine, and he kind of joked about being flattered that people thought he could get laid on both ends.
It's interesting how he chose to address those rumors, especially considering what we know now. But in the end, those rumors combined with the information from Braddock, they led to Chrisley's downfall.
Yeah.
Chrisley's lawyer tried to discredit Braddock, calling him obsessed with Chrisley, but the damage was done.
Yeah, and ultimately, Chrisley and his wife Julie were found guilty of bank fraud and tax evasion. So from reality TV stardom to a federal prison sentence, what a turn of events.
What a story. Before we move on, though, I think we need to take a closer look at that 2010 lawsuit and the specific claims made by Kicklighter, Hudlow, and Hayes. Their experiences really highlight the human cost of these allegations. Are you ready to dive back in?
Absolutely, let's do it. Yeah. So let's take a closer look at those claims from the 2010 lawsuit. It's not just about Chrisley's alleged behavior. It actually names Chrisley Asset Management, Automatic Data Processing, Inc., and Administaff Companies, Inc., as defendants as well.
Okay, so they weren't just going after Chrisley himself, but the companies he was connected to as well. Makes you wonder if they thought those companies played a role in enabling or overlooking what he was allegedly doing.
Exactly. The lawsuit argues that these companies either knew or should have known about Chrisley's alleged behavior and didn't take any steps to stop it.
So let's talk about Kicklighter, Hudlow, and Hayes. What were their actual roles at CAM, and for how long were they working there before they were fired?
All right, so according to the court documents, Kicklighter started working for CAM in September 2008.
Okay, and what about Hudlow and Hayes?
Hudlow started in June of 2008, and Hayes began working there in October of that same year. They all lost their jobs in September 2009.
So they were all relatively new employees when they were let go. What were their salaries like?
Well, the court documents do list their salaries, but the bigger point here is that losing their jobs just before Christmas during a recession would have been a massive financial hit. You know, it really puts things into perspective how vulnerable their situation was.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes the timing of those firings seem even more suspicious, especially if they truly believed they were being retaliated against for speaking up about Chrisley.
Right, and the lawsuit really emphasizes that this wasn't just a case of isolated incidents. It claims that Chrisley's alleged behavior was so widespread that it created this toxic work environment where employees felt pressured to go along with it.
Oh, wow. So it's like his actions weren't just impacting the specific individuals he targeted, but were shaping the whole workplace culture.
Exactly. They're saying it wasn't just Chrisley himself engaging in this behavior, but that it created a situation where this kind of conduct was seen as normal, almost expected.
That's where that concept of a hostile work environment comes into play.
Yeah.
It's not just about individual incidents, but the whole atmosphere and how it makes employees feel.
Right. A hostile work environment is when employees feel uncomfortable or threatened because of inappropriate behavior based on things like their gender or sexuality. And in this case, the fact that the 2010 lawsuit was filed by both men and women suggests that this environment wasn't limited to just one gender.
So Chrisley's alleged behavior was affecting everyone, whether they were directly targeted or not.
Yeah, and the lawsuit really stresses the power dynamic at play here. Chrisley, as the owner and top executive at CAM, held a lot of power over his employees.
It makes sense that they would be hesitant to speak out. They probably worried about getting fired, especially during a tough economic period.
Absolutely, and that fear of retaliation seems to be supported by the fact that they were all fired right after cooperating with the investigation into the 2009 lawsuit.
Yeah, their firings just before Christmas sent a clear message about what happens when you speak out. So it seems like we're seeing a pattern here with these allegations against Chrisley spanning several years, starting with that alleged affair back in the early 2000s and culminating in his conviction for financial crimes in 2022. It's quite a lot to process.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, did Chrisley's money and fame protect him all those years, allowing him to act without any real consequences?
That's an interesting question. But remember, we're dealing with allegations here.
Yeah.
Chrisley has always maintained his innocence on some of these matters.
Right. Of course, it's essential to acknowledge that these are accusations, not proven facts.
But even so, the sources we've looked at definitely suggest a history of questionable behavior, both in Chrisley's personal and professional life.
It's hard to ignore that pattern. I think it's important to consider how these allegations have impacted the people involved. Let's go back to Kicklighter, Hudlow, and Hayes. Their story is a reminder that behind all these headlines and legal documents, there are real individuals who are profoundly affected by these situations.
Absolutely. Let's dive into their personal stories and see what we can learn about the real human cost of speaking out.
Mhm.
Okay, so we've talked about these serious accusations against Todd Chrisley, but let's shift gears a bit and focus on the people who decided to speak out against him. Kickletter, Hudlow, and Hayes, what did they actually go through?
Well, if you recall, they were all interviewed back in April 2009 as part of the investigation into that first sexual harassment lawsuit filed by some other employees at CAM.
Right.
And according to the court documents, they gave honest answers and provided specific examples of things they had witnessed.
I basically backed up the claims from their coworkers that must have taken a lot of courage, knowing they might face some consequences from Chrisley.
Definitely, they put themselves on the line to support their colleagues, which suggests a strong sense of wanting to do the right thing, standing up for what they felt was right.
But it seems like their bravery kind of backfired.
Yeah.
They were all fired from CAM not long after giving their statements.
Yeah, and that's what they based their retaliation claim on in that 2010 lawsuit. They were convinced they were fired because they had spoken truth to power, especially when everyone was worried about keeping their jobs during that recession.
Yeah, it's sad to think they might have lost their jobs just for doing what they thought was right. And we should mention again that the lawsuit doesn't just accuse Chrisley, it names CAM, ADP, and Administaff too.
That's right. The lawsuit claims that those companies didn't protect the plaintiffs from the harassment and essentially allowed this behavior to continue.
It really paints a disturbing picture of a workplace where employees felt like they couldn't speak up.
Absolutely. And for Kicklighter, Hudlow, and Hayes, the timing of their firings right before Christmas during such a difficult economic time really adds insult to injury.
Yeah, I mean, losing your job is never easy,
Mhm.
but facing unemployment right before the holidays when money is already tight, that must have been just devastating.
Absolutely. It really highlights the real financial and emotional consequences of speaking out against powerful people.
And the lawsuit also shed some light on the emotional toll this whole thing took on them.
Yeah.
They said they felt disturbed, betrayed, and humiliated by Chrisley's actions. Imagine the constant stress of fearing retaliation.
It's a powerful reminder of how difficult it is for victims of workplace harassment. Even if they find the courage to speak out, they risk losing their jobs, their reputation, and the emotional scars can last a long time.
So we've uncovered a pretty complex web of accusations and betrayals and legal battles. What are the key takeaways from this deep dive into the world of Todd Chrisley?
Well, I think it forces us to look past the glamour of reality TV and confront some uncomfortable truths about things like power and privilege and accountability. Chrisley created this carefully crafted persona, but these allegations suggest a much different story.
It's true. His fall from grace is a reminder that fame and money don't excuse bad behavior. It really makes you think about how much we as a society are willing to ignore when it comes to the actions of people we admire or find entertaining.
It really does. And as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to think about. Does this story reflect a bigger problem in society where wealth and fame shield people from facing consequences for their actions?
That's a great question and a good place to leave it. Thanks everyone for joining us as we explored this complex and at times unsettling story. It's a reminder to always dig a little deeper and remember that there are often hidden stories beneath the surface. Thanks for listening.